Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of the L. Douglas Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at VCU, welcome to July's Lunch and Learn. We are thrilled to have you join us for today's special session, introducing Uncounted, a civilian-led approach to in-custody death transparency, featuring Dr. D. Pulane Lucas, and our moderator, Chuck Kehoe, who is Wilder School adjunct faculty in the criminal justice program. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Our free monthly events spark meaningful conversations and connect you with leaders in our community. Join us with policy makers and visionaries as we discuss issues of the day. Before I get started, I have a few announcements. First and foremost, my name is Stephen Dozier. I'm the Senior Director of Development here at the Wilder School. And for my first announcement, tomorrow, Thursday, July 17th, at the Library of Virginia, the Library of Virginia will host the opening of House to Highway, Reclaiming a Community History, an exhibit by the Jackson Project featuring one of our premier alumni, Dr. Sisha Joy Moon. The free event runs from 4 to 7:15 p.m. with a panel discussion at 6:15 highlighting stories of community and resilience in Jackson Ward, including the incredible story of Abraham Peyton Skipwith, the first Black homeowner in Jackson Ward after the Civil War. For more details, follow the link in the chat. There's always something exciting happening at the Wilder School, so please continue to follow the chat, even as our esteemed dean, Dr. Susan Gooden, presents our moderator.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and welcome everyone to our July Lunch and Learn. What an exciting topic, an important topic that we will be covering today, looking at Uncounted, a civilian-led approach to in-custody death transparency. This is truly a groundbreaking project looking at the individuals who have died in the custody of law enforcement. But before we get to that, I want to also share with you that today we released the latest version of our Commonwealth poll. Our Commonwealth poll is a signature poll, a CNN endorsed poll that the Wilder School releases periodically based on a survey of registered voters in Virginia. So this poll that was released earlier focuses on the state of the election and voter preferences for our 3 upcoming statewide elections for the position of governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. This is an important election, as we know, and so this is a great way to get a sense of the pulse of registered voters and also to get analysis from our school's namesake, Governor L. Douglas Wilder. I am pleased today to welcome our moderator for today's session, Mr. Chuck Kehoe. Chuck is a wonderful adjunct faculty member in the Wilder School and actually recently, just this spring, received the Outstanding Adjunct Faculty Award from the Wilder School. In addition to that, he has worked in juvenile justice and adult corrections in 4 states and has been the director of 3 agencies. He served as advisor to the United States Army, the United States Navy, and the United States Marine Corps on military correctional affairs. His experience includes positions in public and private sectors in the correction field. More germane to today, over the past 60 years, he has investigated several deaths in custody cases and has been an expert witness in 32 lawsuits involving conditions of confinement, sexual assaults, and inmate abuses. He's also served 2 terms on the Virginia State Bar Disciplinary Committee, and he's past president of the American Correctional Association and received the ER-CAS Correctional Achievement Award in 2007. We're delighted to welcome Chuck today, an expert in his own right, to facilitate our session today. Chuck.
Thank you, Dr. Gooden. It's a privilege to be here with you and to introduce our speaker today. Dr. Pulane Lucas is a public policy scholar, higher education leader, researcher and advocate whose career bridges academia, nonprofit management, and innovation and community transformation. She's the founding president and CEO of Policy Pathways Incorporated, a Richmond transformation, uh, uh, Richmond-based nonprofit organization dedicated to preparing youth and young adults for careers in public service, public policy, international affairs, and related sectors. Presently, she also teaches at the Wilder School. She has received her doctorate degree from the Wilder School, where she earned it in public policy and administration. She also holds an MBA degree from the Harvard Business School. Dr. Lucas recently experienced a profound shift in the focus of her life's work in the wake of the 2023 in custody death of her son, Stanley T. Wilson Jr., a Stanford University graduate and former NFL player. Dr. Lewis has emerged as a national voice advocating for transparency, accountability, and accurate reporting of in custody deaths. Today, you are going to hear about her pioneering work in this area and the challenges that she has faced as she goes forward to try to learn what public agencies do about this situation. It's my privilege to introduce you to Dr. Pulane Lucas. Dr. Lucas, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kehoe, for that Professor Kehoe, for that introduction. I'd like to also thank Dean Gooden for the invitation to present today. I want to thank the Wilder School faculty, administrative staff, and students for the warm welcome. And also give a shout out to Stephen, David, and Katie for helping me prepare for this session today. I want to also thank our board, the Policy Pathways Board, our administrative staff, and our teaching staff, our partners that help Policy Pathways train and educate youth who want to be leaders in public policy and public administration and international affairs. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Uncounted. It's a civilian-led data collection initiative designed to collect information about deaths in custody. What you will hear is the result of the synergy of some brilliant minds. We have a team that's working on Uncounted. That team includes Dr. Jay Aronson, Mr. Michael Hawthorne, Dr. Christina Arrington, Professor Charles Kehoe, Courtney McCubbin, Neha Jan, Logan Sawyers, Anae Pruthi, and Jewel and Jayla Trent. We've also had input from Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights organization, and also faculty from across the country. And I would not be here standing as the mother of Stanley Wilson Jr. without the support of my sister mothers. They are outstanding women, dynamic women who also lost a child in custody. And so I just want to give a shout out to Helen Jones, to Terry Lovett, Paloma Serna, and Tanil Crook, as well as Justice LA. So first off, I want to recommend a couple of books to you. These two books are instrumental to anyone wanting to learn more about deaths in custody. The first book is Death in Custody: How America Ignores the Truth and What We Can Do About It. The book is written by Dr. Roger Mitchell Jr. and Dr. Jay Aronson. It's currently available. This book, in part, inspired Uncounted. The second book is not available until November 2025. And this book is The Coroner's Silence: Death Records and the Hidden Victims of Police Violence, written by Dr. Terrence Keel. Now, the chart that you are looking at, this chart was presented by Dr. Keel during a discussion about his book. The chart shows that in custody deaths impact all segments of American society. But as you can see, Blacks disproportionately carry the burden of in-custody deaths. The table depicts the racial demographics of reported deaths in the United States by law enforcement during arrest or pursuit between the years 2000 and 2020. Now, Black people, particularly Black men, are targeted by the criminal justice system. And we can see this in the statistics. Black adults are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white adults. So what we have is hundreds of thousands of poor people who are in jail because many of them cannot post bail. These numbers are important because when we look at who dies in custody, we see that Black and Latino men ages 18 to 40, pre-trial, and many of them die within 48 hours after incarceration. These are the individuals who are passing away in custody. So Dr. Keel tells us that out of every 5 individuals who die as a result of their encounter with law enforcement, we only have the identities of 3 of those individuals. The other 2 are unknown. That's 40%. And what makes it worse is a statistic that I heard Dr. Andrea Armstrong state. She is a professor of law at Loyola University. And she stated that less than 1% of the individuals who die in custody were actually sentenced to death for their crime. Less than 1%. Now, I believe this information led Dr. Keel to say that incarceration has essentially become another form of capital punishment. So many of us are researchers and scholars here today, and we learn through the IRB process that prisoners are included in the category of vulnerable populations. And when we study prisoners, we ask, what's the unit of analysis? It's the individual. And we give individuals unique identifiers, some combination of letters and numbers. And we do that to hide their identities. But how do we study? These are individuals that we know. But how do we study those who are uncounted? Those who are not included in the databases that we have access to. My son, Stanley Wilson Jr., is uncounted. And here's a picture of Stanley and me when we lived in Cincinnati. And I'll tell you a little story about that. But one of Stanley's friends, he's a frat brother, and he also went into the NFL was drafted into the NFL the year that Stanley was drafted in the NFL. He asked me, "What does it mean to be uncounted?" They called you and told you that Stanley had passed. We had the homegoing service. People are aware that Stanley is no longer with us. What it means to be uncounted is to be bureaucratically invisible to the public. No one uploaded Stanley's information onto the appropriate online in custody death databases. No entity took responsibility, custodial responsibility for Stanley's body when he passed. So that meant that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, who had custody of Stanley, who was housed in Twin Towers Correctional Facility, when he passed away, there was no internal affairs investigation. That means that no one pulled the video cameras, interviewed those who were there at the time of his passing, investigated the scene around his death. That did not happen. But also, the hospital where Stanley was being transferred, Metropolitan State Hospital and Mental Health Hospital, also abdicated custodial responsibility of Stanley. And as a result, no administrative review of his death occurred. Now, there was an incident report that was performed, and that incident report concluded that Stanley was not in the custody of the hospital, and so no administrative review was recommended. So what we have is the erasure of Stanley's life and death. And as a result, Stanley is not listed and he is no longer in public record. But he's also, and he should not be, others, we see this, he also would be erased from the public's mind because no one would know that Stanley ever passed away in custody because he's not listed in any public databases. He's not in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's online in custody death database. He is not in the California Correctional System Healthcare Database, nor is he listed in the it's the OIG. I forget. It's the OIG General Office of. It's slipping my mind, but it's the OIG in custody database for California. So Stanley's case is unique because he is uncounted, but we know he's uncounted. The question is, how many more are uncounted that we don't know about? So Stanley serves as a beacon of light shining on the bureaucratic system that is very good at hiding deaths of those who die and who are incarcerated. And this system essentially is erasing individuals from databases and making them disappear. And so, what I am going to discuss today, I'm going to share with you information about Stanley's life and death, provide some background and some context. I also am going to introduce you to Uncounted, a civilian-led approach to in-custody death reporting. And so let's talk about Stanley. As you saw, the photo of Stanley and me in Cincinnati. And I want to take you to a moment where that is a very defining moment in Stanley's life. Stanley and his grandparents, his paternal grandparents, they flew to Miami for the Super Bowl. Stanley's father was a member of the Cincinnati Bengals football team. And that year, Stanley's father was the leading rusher for the Cincinnati Bengals. This was Super Bowl 23. Stanley was 6 years old. His father, Stanley Sr., was the third leading rusher in the NFL that year and had been instrumental in the Bengals getting to the Super Bowl. They were playing the 49ers, San Francisco 49ers. Coach Sam Weish says, if we have Stanley, we win. So the night before the Super Bowl, there's a team meeting and there's no Stanley Sr. at the meeting. Stanley Jr. and his grandparents are already in Miami, excited about the Super Bowl. Stanley Sr. is found in a hotel in a drug stupor. As a result, he was banned from the NFL for life. When Stanley Jr.'s grandparents found out about what happened, they asked my son, do you still want to go to the Super Bowl? He says yes. They go to the Super Bowl, but his father is not playing. And on top of that, the Cincinnati Bengals lose the Super Bowl game. So much later, Stanley tells me that he wants to change his name. And I tell him no. He wants to change his name because every year there's this top 10 bloopers of the Super Bowl, and he has to hear what happened to his father. But he also tells me, I never want to use drugs and I never want to be incarcerated. Okay, these are 3 things he did not want. But Stanley soon accepts his name and is very interested in playing football and going into the NFL himself. He thinks, well, I can change the connotations and associations with this name. And so Stanley becomes an outstanding football player in middle school and high school. He gets recruited to Stanford University, and he gets drafted to the NFL. But he experiences a career-ending injury. And as a result, he has to think about post-NFL life. He goes on, he's brilliant, loving, wonderful person. He wants to become a nurse because he is buffed, he can lift heavy bodies. And so he thinks he gets his nursing degree. He even completes 2 NFL executive programs in entrepreneurial management and sports management. But eventually, we start to see changes in Stanley's behavior. He starts to hear voices. He starts to use drugs, and he gets incarcerated. He even tries to change his name, but the judge would not allow him to change his name. So as a result, Stanley ends up incarcerated in Twin Towers. A judge deems Stanley incompetent to stand trial on November the 7th, 2022. And orders LASD to have Stanley transferred to Metropolitan State Hospital no later than December 5th, 2022. LASD defies the court order. So we get to January 5th, 2023. Stanley is still and has not been transferred. The judge had also ordered the medical director of the hospital to come before the court on February 8th, 2023, to give a report on Stanley's treatment and progress. So Stanley is not transferred until February 1st, almost 2 months after the court order stated he should be transferred. But in the process of being transferred, Stanley dies. Now, had Stanley not passed away, Stanley would have gone through the intake process, gone into the hospital. The medical director would have reported. We would never know that LASD had defied the court order. But Stanley dies. And what we believe is that LASD went ahead and transferred Stanley's body to the hospital and basically left his body there and abdicated custodial responsibility. So I was informed that Stanley had passed, and immediately I said, we have to get Stanley's brain into the NFL CTE brain bank at Boston University. I, his mother, immediately think that this is important because this is how we envision Uncounted working as well. Stanley was diagnosed with CTE. That's a neurodegenerative disease that results from being hit in the head. Stanley had played football since 13. And so we have Stanley not listed on any databases. Now, Uncounted. I want to shift to Uncounted. Uncounted was the result of me. Well, let me tell you how I found out about Stanley being uncounted. So after he passed away, and I was very interested in speaking with someone at the ACLU of Southern California. And that's Melissa Camacho, an attorney. And in preparation for our meeting, she had done some research. And she told me when we met that Stanley's not listed in any databases. I can't find him. Now, in California, January 1st, 2023, AB 2761 was enacted. And that legislation required all deaths in custody to be posted online and public. And so I didn't know about, living in Virginia, I didn't know about this legislation. But immediately I wanted to learn as much as I could about death and custody reporting. So I began to read about DICRA, which is the Federal Death and Custody Reporting Act. I also started to look into state level death and custody reporting. And I want to just highlight that Delegate McQuinn, who is a delegate here in the Richmond area, co-sponsored death and custody reporting legislation last year in 2024 that was approved by a bipartisan support. But what we found with the federal law is that it was weakened when a stipulation that stated that states that did not report would lose grant funding. And Congress removed that stipulation, essentially weakening that bill and requirement. And so reporting became very inconsistent and inaccurate. What we see with Virginia is the governor did not fund that legislation. In California, where there is reporting, we see that not all deaths are counted. And so that's a problem. And as a result of this sort of inconsistent and inaccurate and even non-compliance in reporting, in 2021, nearly 1,000 in custody deaths went unreported, according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office. These failures in reporting, they deprive Congress, policymakers, and the public of essential data. We cannot identify patterns. We cannot prevent future deaths. And so it is important that we find a way to capture this information more accurately. Not only that, there's a lack of standardization across death and custody legislation, how to define custody itself. And it's very difficult to get this data because even with FOIA requests, it's difficult. Sheriff's departments, counties, states don't want to turn this information over. So, to share with you a little bit more about Uncounted, it's a national, civilian led, civilian reported database for collecting information on in custody deaths across the United States. Uncounted is a civilian driven digital platform that enables anyone, any family member, medical staff, if you work in the coroner's office or the medical examiner's office, you are work on a jail staff, you are incarcerated, or just a concerned citizen. When you hear or learn of someone, your loved one or others, who have passed away in custody, our goal is to have individuals see this reporting as a civic responsibility. Just like I knew I wanted Stanley's brain donated to the brain bank, and I only had 72 hours to report his death and have his brain donated. But I knew that that needed to happen. Our goal is to have citizens learn more about deaths in custody, and understand that reporting becomes a civic responsibility because we're missing too many lives. They are uncounted. We want to capture that information and identify those individuals, recognizing that everyone who dies in custody is an individual with a story and deserves to be counted. They deserve to be protected in life and counted in death. Now, Uncounted operates independently of law enforcement and governmental agencies, and it's committed to upholding transparency, dignity, and justice. And you can go to uncounted.us and see the form. This form, it has 3 sections, and the 3 sections are personal and demographic information about the decedent, information about the decedent's death, and contact information. Anyone who submits information can submit information anonymously or with contact information. And so we are committed to bringing recognition to custodial deaths across America by drawing upon citizens and responsible civilians who will report the names and information of those who die in custody. You can live in rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas. We want you to have access to this data portal so that we can ensure that there is no one who dies in custody who's overlooked, forgotten, or intentionally left unreported. And I'd just like to say, this is a picture of Stanley. This is him playing football at Stanford. And before closing, I like to let you know that recently a judge ruled that Stanley was in fact in the custody of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and that they withheld treatment, medical treatment from him. And so that ruling essentially says that the Sheriff's Department cannot contribute to someone's death by overprescribing medication, neglect, and then transfer them to another site, leave their body there, and abdicate custodial responsibility. And so with that, I thank you. Thank you for joining today, and thank you for your time. Um, This is a flyer, an uncounted flyer, and you can take a screenshot of that for more information on Uncounted, or just go to uncounted.us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas, for that personal and very emotional presentation. And we're so sorry for your loss, as some of our listeners have commented in the chat section. Stanley was a remarkable young man, and we are we are impressed and touched tremendously by your willingness to keep his memory and his contributions so alive with your robust programming, your professionalism, and your dedication. Nothing meets the definition of a mother's love like you do. I can tell you that's the way I feel about it. So we have several questions that have come in, and I would like to begin by asking you, what is your marketing campaign or strategy for engaging people and getting them involved in the Uncounted project?
Well, let me say first that I am working with a team of individuals, high school, college, and professional. And we are working together on our marketing strategy. Um, we do have a website. We will be using social media, um, speaking engagements like this one, direct mail. We have a long list of community partners. Um, the team that's working on the community partners and the marketing aspect, they include Ane, Pruthi, Neha, Jan, and Michael Hawthorne. And we also include word of mouth. It's important to actually go to the jails during visitation. I remember visiting Stanley multiple times, and that's the time to hand out information and get the word out. It is crucial that we brand Uncounted and have various kinds of associations so that and educate people about in custody death. So word of mouth, we have articles and press releases, which we have been distributing. We do plan to do radio and TV interviews, um, as well as in our partnering with other organizations, really getting together to meet with individuals on the ground. So we are, and I'm just going to lay out some of them. We have to actually go to where people are. And that's the visitation areas, engaging family members. I mentioned other mothers who have lost loved ones. Each one of them is engaged in activism to reduce deaths in custody. So, having tables set up at their events and other events, working with Justice LA and other organizations like Justice LA has been very important in getting the word out. And so that includes rallies and other venues where we can share information.
Okay, thank you for that. One of the other questions, another question that came in is, um, how often are the uncounted deaths investigated fully? Is avoiding the transparency of publicly acknowledging a death a loophole for covering nefarious acts?
We don't know that. I don't have an answer to that. As I mentioned, Stanley is unique. Stanley was the first individual. His death was let's say at January 1st, 2023, those who had fought for that legislation were very happy to see, sad that these deaths were occurring, but they had fought for transparency in who was dying in jails. And they could see these numbers ticking up. And so February 1st, they see a number, they're watching the numbers, but it was a legislative victory for this to happen. Until Stanley, they thought they were counting all deaths in custody. Stanley was the first one in Southern California where people said, uh-oh, we have an undercount here. So we don't know about those who are uncounted. And that's why we are hoping that parents will report, and we can, this is reporting retroactively as well as moving forward into the future. So if your loved one passed away last year, the year before, or 10 years ago, we are hoping to capture that information. Once we do that, we can get a better understanding of how investigations into their deaths have occurred.
Okay, thank you. This listener said, I am sorry to hear about the tragedies of both Stanleys. I'm grateful to you for sharing your experience and your working towards change. Can you tell us, if you feel comfortable, how is the cause of death listed on Stanley Jr.'s death certificate?
That's a very good question. It is listed as a pulmonary embolism. Now that we are told that Stanley had a blood clot in his leg that traveled to his lungs. Um, Now, this is interesting because one, when individuals are incarcerated, they can sometimes stay in their cell 23 hours out of the day. So that physical inactivity is a problem. Also, in Stanley's case, he was given 3 anti-psychotic drugs or antidepressant drugs. Um, and I think it was antidepressant. And 2 of those drugs were not supposed to be given together because they can contribute to anxiety and pulmonary embolisms. Also, restraint. We are told that Stanley was restrained. When you're on some of these medications, when you're restrained, it contributes to pulmonary embolisms. I did see some video. Now, we have requested video of Stanley's last hour of life. We were told by the LA County Sheriff's Department that there's no video of Stanley's last hour of life. We are told that there were either no cameras in the area, or the cameras were broken. We were also told that the video footage had been recorded over. So we don't have video footage of Stanley's last hour of life. But I have seen Stanley. Um, it was like maybe an hour and a half before his passing, where he attempts to stand up and he stumbles. It's like his leg is weak and he stumbles to the ground. And that could have been him beginning to experience something going on in his leg. And so it is listed as a pulmonary embolism. But many things can cause that. Stanley also had bruises and other evidence of trauma to his body that we have seen in photos. And so, yes, but without the last hour of video footage, it's difficult to say what happened. And we have had conflicting stories about what happened to Stanley.
Thank you. This listener asks, is there a database of current uncounted deaths under research which the public can access?
I don't know. Well, let me say this. Yes, yes. Um, Dr. Andrea Armstrong and others, they are collecting information about uncounted deaths from death certificates and from the media. So yes, there are databases that are collecting information on uncounted deaths. However, many deaths are not reported in the media, and the death certificates might not capture that they were incarcerated. And that's one of the things that Roger Mitchell and Jay Aronson recommend in their book. They would like to see a checkbox on all death certificates that states someone was in custody. But we feel that loved ones and other individuals, even those who are incarcerated, who are very much aware of deaths that occur in custody, we would like firsthand reporting done of deaths. And so that's what makes Uncounted so unique.
Thank you again. Another listener, and we've got a lot of questions. We probably won't be able to touch on more than a fraction of them. Your presentation generated so much interest. This listener says, thank you, Dr. Lucas, for making such an important and necessary program available. It is very much in the spirit of open police archives. I am happy to hear that a judge ruled on the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department responsibility in your son's death. What judge and court ruled on that, And again, thank you very much for this presentation.
The judge, his name, let me see if I can find it. I just wrote it down. If not, you can contact me. I think his name was, I don't want to say it. Oh, I will have to get that for the person. If they can send you their contact information, and I will get that for them. I have it written down somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to find it right now. But I will certainly get that.
Okay. One more question, and then we're going to turn the meeting back to.
Let me, I'm sorry. His name, Judge Furen. It's Furen. Furen. And that's in Los Angeles County.
Very good. Thank you. One more quick question, and then we're going to turn the meeting back to Dr. Gooden and to Steve Dozier. How do the two books you recommended early in the presentation add to your work?
Well, first of all, I have to say, I haven't read Dr. Keel's. I've only sat through an introduction to his book a book discussion. So I haven't read his book. But let me say that Death in Custody is important because it lays out a history of how Black bodies have been dehumanized over time. I go back, when I think of this, I go back to the Middle Passage and think about Black bodies that were thrown overboard, that had died on slave ships and were uncounted. Now, the Death in Custody book, what it does, it picks up where Ida B. Wells, a journalist, she began to be concerned about lynching and Black men disproportionately lynched and were uncounted. So you get to see that there is a legacy to this devaluation of those who are incarcerated, those who are in captivity. And there are additional cases. There's, and I have the book here. I have the book here. And it's a wonderful book in terms of laying out, they look at Sandra Bland. This is where I read about Death in Custody, the Death in Custody Reporting Act, mortality behind bars. Very good in terms of providing you with a context. But let me say, and we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I do want to highlight that we need to look at the globalization of the prison industrial complex and the 13th Amendment and how those incarcerated are used as a supply of labor. And if the prison industrial complex goes global, because what we have is an untapped supply of labor, those individuals, as we think about bureaucratic efficiency, just like immigrants are being shipped to other countries, I can see that there will become a time where criminals are shipped to Liberia, El Salvador, South Sudan to work in labor camps. I really do. Now, I say this because when they go uncounted in another country, we will not have names. There will be no investigations. that is going to really be a problem. And so I believe what we're seeing happening with immigrants today, many of them going uncounted, I think that eventually, with the way the capitalistic mind works, I think we will see that occurring with prisoners as well, those who are incarcerated. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lucas, again, on behalf of all of our listeners in the Wilder School. We want to thank you for, again, for your personal comments, your wonderful work, and we encourage our listeners to support you and to become part of the uncounted army of people. So I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Gooden now, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Dr. Gooden?
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucas and Mr. Kehoe, for a very compelling session. And again, I applaud you, Dr. Lucas, for the very thoughtful work that you are doing on this critically important and personal subject. And look forward to seeing the Uncounted project realize all of its potential so that we can have more accurate reporting of deaths in custody. So thank you both. And there are a few final remarks from Stephen Dozier, who's going to tell us about our next Lunch and Learn speaker.
Thanks, Dean Gooden. Thank you, Chuck Kehoe, and thank you, Dr. Lucas. As everybody said in the chat and in our Q&A, one of the most engaged audiences because you shared something so personal, and we appreciate you for that. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into our next announcement, which is first and foremost, we will not have our lunch and learn for August. We skip August. We're going straight into September. So please save the date for Tracy Douglas, who's the CEO of Virginia Community Healthcare Association, where we discuss the future of Medicaid. Again, we are not having a lunch and learn session in August. Please join us on September 17th for your lunch hour. We look forward to this discussion and this very important topic. And I want to thank our communications team behind the scenes who is navigating all the presentation. We appreciate them. I want to say thank you again to Dr. Lucas and to Chuck Kehoe for a very in-depth conversation. Thank you all